Hi, and welcome to Michael Chekhov, the NMCA Way. I am Lisa Dalton, one of the founders of the National Michael Chekhov Association. And our topic today is radiating and receiving under the general category of characterization. And I am here today with my colleague and NMCA certified teacher, Paul Bawek. Say hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone.
So we're going to start with the on your feet portion, which is going to have us up on our feet or practicing our process of radiating and receiving. So I will invite us to literally come up on your feet, and we will begin with getting in contact with our ideal artistic center in the center of the chest. Mr. Chekhov suggested that this point was about 3 inches below that point where the collarbone joins and about 3 inches inside. So it's not on the surface itself, but if you dropped a plumb line through the top fontanelle and dropped it straight down between your legs, you would find that intersection. And if you extended your arms out to the sides, you would find that you would be in the intersection from that middle finger right across there. So you have this intersection of the vertical and the horizontal there. And this point in the body seems to be the point where we tend to gesture when we identify ourselves as I or me. Hey, this is mine. Hey, I know what I'm saying here. I know. We don't tend to go, I know. We don't tend to go, I know. We tend to go, I know, hey, that's mine. What about me? We tend to come here. So we're going to imagine that we can allow ourselves to become aware of a special power in that intersection within us. That ideal artistic center has a tiny seed of light, a tiny seed of warmth within us. And you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed. Eventually, you want to be able to work and have the same power with your eyes open as you do with your eyes closed. So if you've always done it with eyes closed, maybe now's a great time to challenge yourself to be able to hold the image while you're making contact. So in our imagination, we allow this little tiny seed of light to be there. We don't even have to put it there. It's already there. And it is glowing. It is glowing. And we could say that that glow is kind of like a fire or a beam of light that sends energy out. That's called radiating. Sending that energy from that center point out. So now we imagine we can fill and send and expand and open and radiate beams of light from that center point. And it opens in all directions, sending light like the sun, a globe, sending beams of light forward, to the sides, behind us, down and up. It's like a glowing sun getting stronger, larger, fuller, radiating, filling the whole upper body, flowing out into the arms, down through the chest, through the ribs, through the diaphragm, down into the belly, down into your kidneys and your liver and your pancreas. It flows, it radiates down into the intestines, all the way down. It's radiating out into all the muscles, through the bones. It's already filled your heart, and it's radiating up your neck and out behind you and in your chin. And it goes through your whole head, radiating light through your thinking forces, radiating light and warmth through your feeling forces, radiating fire and warmth and power down into your willing forces and out into this space. And we feel this sending, sending, sending. And really, you can imagine it's effortless as you allow. And if you want to move around a little bit, you can do that. Imagine that every movement sends this warmth and light radiating further into the cosmos. And we feel the outward flow of the direction. Imagine that it's flowing from you, and you have, just to allow it, you have an unlimited supply of this fire, light, and warmth to radiate. You do not have any way to possibly exhaust it. It is so unlimited. Is giving, radiating. And imagine you can say a few words or sounds or letters of the alphabet, numbers. 1,
2,
X, 5,
so, 1, yes, no, many,
good. And now, standing open in our sort of expanded capacity, imagine you can feel radiant streams of light and warmth coming from above. And you inhale it, you receive it. And you feel these streams of warmth streaming up from way below, from beyond the earth in other parts of the cosmos, and in from behind, and in from in front. And you receive them. You allow them to come to you. And you inhale them. And you can even exhale while you receive them. And the movements come from the periphery to you. The radiating comes from the periphery to you. You take in and you listen with all your body, listening to the whole of cosmic existence, listening with your back, with your legs, receiving from every direction. And now receive a sound and allow your voice to echo the sound that comes to you.
okay,
A,
yes,
5,
no,
B,
two,
yes,
yes,
good. And allow yourself to sort of pack that up, bring yourself to yourself. And I'm going to toss it over to Paul to lead.
Okay, I just wanted to think of physicalizing that a little more. In other words, feel the center and the energy, the ideal artistic center radiating from that ideal artistic center. And imagine that you're my partner, or there can be anything outside of you that's a partner. And just move your body, you can move a little foot forward toward that space. So get that energy moving in your ideal artistic center. That radiation that's coming from you. And radiate it to your partner, or radiate into the distance in front of you. And radiate it, radiate it, radiate it. And then let it, as you can stand there, you can still radiate, 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 radiate. And then just slowly, as you come back, start receiving. Let the energy from that space that you're looking at, maybe Lisa or an object, let that energy start coming toward you as you bring yourself back and just receive it. And keep on receiving it and receiving it. You can even be still and keep on receiving it as you're just standing there still. Keep on receiving it. And then turn the tides and start radiating out. You want to send your message out to that space. Keep on radiating and radiating, radiating. And then slowly start receiving. Receiving, receiving, and allow the body to echo. And it can be still and still receive, still receive, still receive, still receive. Good. And sometimes with a partner, you can also you can send, and then they'll send to you and you receive. So sometimes it's nice to have a partner just go back and forth. And just the physical movement echoes what's going on with the radiating and receiving in the body.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, we're going to do another exercise. Now we're going to actually allow ourselves to imagine we can focus our radiating from one particular spot in ourselves to a spot in the space. So we'll start with the beginning spot as the ideal artistic center. And it's going to, we can imagine it's almost like a spotlight, or those big lights that they have at like movie premieres, giant spotlights that kind of move around. So imagine this, there is this powerful spotlight that's living, generating, transforming you through you, and it's focused on something. Find it, let it scan the room, and then find that where you are now connected with that particular spot in your room. Could be on an object, could be on the ceiling, it could be on the floor, wall, out a window. And just feel now as you move a little bit toward it, like we were just doing, radiating toward it. Now imagine this spotlight stays on it as you turn to the side. And now that spotlight is still radiating to it, but you're not looking at it. And maybe you keep going around and you're still connected to that spot. And you can feel that spot now in your backspace. Feel it radiating behind you. And you can step a little bit away from it, or you can back up toward it, and you can feel you're still radiating, always radiating, and continue around and feel it coming from your other side, going from your ideal artistic center through the side of your body, staying connected to it. Rotating all the way around, and when you see it again, what happens? Did you lose contact with it? Do you feel more in contact with it because you're connected and looking at it now? Can you maintain the same power and sense of contact in radiating without looking at it? Believe in that contact. Turn away. Now move a little more quickly. Imagine you can create a little sequence of activity. Stay in contact with it. I'm going to walk to my chair. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to look. I'm going to say, hello, how are you?
How you doing?
And I'm going to get up, and I'm not looking at that spot, but I am still radiating to it.
Hey.
And now I'm going to pause and I'm going to turn my back to it and feel, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. Radiating to it, I'm now going to allow myself to receive. And imagine that spot is radiating to me. And now I'm moving around. I'm continuing to receive from that spot. I'm not looking at it. I'm going to do my activity again. I'm going to sit again. Hi. Hi. I'm receiving from that spot still. And I'm doing my little activity, still receiving from that spot. And I receive my chair now. And I disconnect from that spot. I can even let it come back to me. We merge together. And or I can peel it off and send it back up to the sphere of imagination. There. Now, I'd like to invite Paul to just try this little line of dialogue. And the line of dialogue is, I wonder where everyone went today. It seems so quiet. Okay? And you can do any little business of activity, but you'll repeat that activity. So first, so it's, I wonder
Where everyone went today, it seemed so quiet.
Either one, yeah. And you're going to say it first as a character who is predominated by receiving. Okay.
You know, I wonder where everybody went today. It just seemed so quiet.
I don't know where everyone went. I wonder where they went. It seems so quiet. And release it. And now turn on your radiation, Paul. Same kind of behavior or whatever, and allow the line to be said through a radiating character.
You know, I wonder where everybody went today. I mean, it seems so quiet. Just quiet. Quiet.
Yeah, I wonder too. I mean, everyone's, it's just, I don't know where everyone went today. It seems so quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Good. Good. And release. Good. So we switched. Radiating to receiving. Excellent. So that, Paul, do you have another exercise you want to do, or should we start talking?
Let's start talking. I loved that one. Thank you.
Great. So that ends our Chekhov on your feet portion, and we will continue now with our insights and ideas about radiating and receiving.
I have an insight that when I did the turnaround, and it was a little, it grew, the connection grew and grew, but the first time I came around and I went through my body and I came around, I reconnected with it. It was like I was connecting with an old friend, you know? So immediately it was like, there you are again. Even though you were still in me, I was still radiating to you, you know, there you are again. And then the next time I went around, it was this connection was so much, it was much more connected. It was much easier to talk through my back, to feel connected the entire time. The first rotation took a little, I was like halfway there. And then once I connected, it was like, bam, there's my old friend. I had been connected to you. I just, so, and then it grew from there. So it was nice.
That's great because it shows us a couple of things. One, the power of it, period, is dynamic, meaning whether we, in the first time, that sense of, oh, there is my old friend, it is just an example of how when part of us is connected to something, is just radiated and connected to it, that when we actually do reconnect sort of face to face, there is an additional emotional response to that connection. And the fact that you were able to sustain the connection more deeply in the following round again shows how practice, repetition is the growing power and the strength, the strengthening of it. Just it does require practice, as all Michael Chekhov's tools do. The more you play with them, the more you understand their potential and the more strength of expression that you get. Now, I know you had a question you wanted to ask me.
It was really about the energy, using other spaces like you talked about, having the radiating coming from like your will force, from your thinking force. I mean, being fueled, obviously, or maybe from your will, does it come through your ideal center? Like if I really need to radiate a need to you, does it start here and go down to here? Or I don't know, I guess maybe it's different for everybody, but I was just wondering if like I really need you to get me. I think they both ignite at the same time, right? If I really need, I'm thinking I really need, so I just answered my question. Yeah, they both light up at the same time. All right.
So go. Yeah, extending this exercise that we did of just rotating, picking a spot, rotating, would involve shifting where the start point was and we would go, to different centers, but we wouldn't just do the head, the heart, and the pelvis. We would do your left knee. We would do your right eyebrow. And if we did something like, for example, your right eyebrow, and we did what we were radiating was a laser, a permeating laser, we might wind up with something like Clint Eastwood when he says, "Make my day," right? Right. Yeah. So,
or it could be like sarcasm, like, "You silly bum. Doggy, have you been bad?" Sorry.
So that is very, that's developing the ability to focus your energy into a center and really send or receive into that is a separate skill set, using radiating and receiving for purposes that go beyond just characterization. And the decisions might be made by the nature of characterization. So just to review, characterization is what distinguishes the how a character rather than the what or the why of a character. So, why, what is the objective of the character? That's not characterization. What the character is doing, walking across the street, not characterization. How the character goes about getting what they need and how the character does what they do, those are elements of characterization. And how the character expresses their emotions, their thinking forces and their willing forces. That is characterization. And so when we look at the chart of inspired action here, we see characterization in its own category, and it has thinking, feeling, and willing. It has imaginary bodies and centers here. So 3 primary tools of characterization. And then radiating and receiving is its own box. And so, and then we also see, just so you know, we see radiating also under the qualities of movement. And so we're looking at why I include here radiating, and what we're talking about today is not just the overall concept of radiating and receiving, but as a tool for characterization. So I want to make a distinction between these 3 situations. The use of it as characterization, the independent use of it, and the use of the term in qualities of movement, or kinds or types of movement, the 4 elements of motion. So to begin with, we could, well, I'm hoping through the exercising process that we've experienced that there is a distinction between.
You won.
So I'm hoping that we've, in our exercising process, been able to make a distinction between what sending, radiating, is from receiving. So we're just looking at this basic concept of radiating and receiving, and we could say overall, that's the concept of radiation. Well, if we say the word radiation, we mean the sending of energy. And that sending can be either from the center to the periphery or from the periphery to the center. So both terms with ing, radiating or receiving, are under the title of radiation. So all performers must have radiation. If they are not having some expression of radiation, they are dead on the stage. Mr. Chekhov tells us they are dead on the stage. And we do see dead performances where there's simply no radiation. And this often happens, especially if someone's caught in their own mental processes, when they're caught in their thinking forces. They're either thinking of the past, they're recalling something, they're struggling for a line, they're worried about somebody's opinion in the audience, and their energy forces, you could say their ideal artistic center forces, are doubling back in on them instead of flowing out or flowing in. So when the force goes into the thinking force, the lower ego, then we have a cessation of radiation. Okay? We cannot be radiating and receiving with the larger community if we're only in an inner cycle about ourselves and our lower ego. So all artists need to either continuously be sending out or drawing in. And it's just like the breath. The radiating is like the breath. The radiation is like the breath. It has an outflow and it has an inflow. And we can hold in the breath and we can sustain, like Paul, when you had us hold in a moment, we could keep radiating, or keep receiving, even though we had no motion. And very often in that holding of the breath, we have what is known as a pause. It's the art of a complete pause if nothing is moving and the breath is held. And in that moment, we can feel the power of the receiving or the radiating building to a climax, which is either the next inhale or the next exhale, right? So that art of the pause can be the most energetically dynamic moment in the storytelling. Mr. Chekhov says the absence of outer movement creates the heightened inner movement. The most heightened inner movement comes from the absence of outer moments, right? Outer physical movement. So understanding when we talk about radiation, this is charisma. We're talking about the charisma of an artist. And an artist who is not either radiating or receiving lacks charisma. They lack appeal to their audiences and with their partners on stage. So we can radiate and receive every single thing on the chart. The atmospheres we very strongly receive, and we radiate them first so that we can then receive them. So we have that breathing, radiating, and receiving. We receive everything that comes from our partners, everything that comes from our props, from our costumes, from the images, from our higher self, and from the entire mise-en-scène. We radiate in ideas of the director, ideas of the writer. We receive the ideas. We receive that communion. We're in communion with these different elements. And that is always a radiating and receiving process. That is the radiating and receiving that lives here in this spot. Over here, under qualities of movement, where radiating is listed, it is a separate use. And this is rarely taught because often just molding, flowing, flying are taught as qualities of movement, and radiating and receiving is taught as this process of giving and receiving, and something that we want to do all the time. So just to look at, we understand that this radiating on this list is earth, water, air, and fire or light there, or warmth. It is an element. We think of it as the element. So however you define the 4 basic elements, that's what we're talking about here. And we're talking about movement. So this is any movement in any direction, but we're really talking about a degree of resistance, that earth molding meets a great degree of resistance, whether the movement is a mental movement, an emotional movement, a movement of your will force, a movement of a psychological gesture, or the movement of your hand to pick up that pen, right? Whether the element of earth is in the space between you and the pen, or whether the element is your body itself, your hand is earth, clay, whatever. These are all different ways you can play with these qualities of movement. And so they are applicable to anything that moves, and everything moves. So anything that moves can either move more like earth, water, air, or light, or fire, how you'd like to describe it. I like to use like variations of those. So for example, in this radiating, I love to use lightning, I love to use fire, I love to use laser beams, and I love to use sunlight. And those are like 4 different expressions of the radiating of a quality of movement. And they're all perfectly valid interpretations. Anything you can imagine that feels like fire and light to you could be radiating. Paul, do you want to say something?
No, it's just so true. I mean, some of the greatest actors, if you watch them, and they radiate, and it's what draws you to them. I mean, I remember seeing Ian McKellen for the first time, and there was no one on that stage that was radiating like him. I mean, he was radiating Grandma. He was with Grandma sitting there, and his energy radiated all the way. So when he talked, you were right there with him. I mean, that's how open he was in his radiating to the entire space. And that's what I think that's our goal. But, and also how it is an active process, and to practice it, it's like building a muscle. You know, if you're really receiving, it takes energy. If you're really radiating, it takes energy. And if you're going to do that for 90 minutes on the stage, you need to practice that. It's like focus and concentration. Why wouldn't you practice that as an artist as well?
That's correct. That is absolutely correct, Paul.
One more thing. I was doing this workshop this week, and it was about being present. And man, if you're present, you need to be receiving and then radiating to the specific person you're talking to make sure they're there with you. I'm present with you, man. But you can't be present without receiving,
right,
and radiating. So this, the stuff about we need to be there and honest. Like, yeah, you're there and honest. You need to be taking it in.
Great. So up here under characterization, Mr. Chekhov would ask Mala Powers when he coached her privately one of two questions first. One is your character primarily a radiator or a receiver? Is it primarily radiating or receiving? And the other was about the character's thinking, feeling, willing predominance and the difference between Mala's radiating and receiving and the character's radiating and receiving, or the character's thinking, feeling, willing, and Mala's thinking, feeling, willing. So to understand this, if you look at some artists, like I mentioned, Clint Eastwood built up his radiation. And it really reaches its pinnacle in Make My Day. And then he rides that and he uses that very powerful radiation. And when he gets to something like Bridges of Madison County or Unforgiven, he switches. And he becomes predominantly a receiving character. In Bridges of Madison County, he receives the world through his lens. And Meryl Streep is also a receiving character in Bridges of Madison County. And that's why the two of them can't stay together, because they're both receivers. And they can't move forward with that. But you look at Meryl Streep in Death Becomes Her, and she's a super radiator. Sophie's Choice, super receiver. So you see someone like Glenn Close, she can absolutely shift her characters from radiating to receiving. And Marilyn Monroe was a receiver. She was very intensely a receiver. Someone like Jimmy Dean, who loved Michael Chekhov's work, he was a receiver also. And every once in a while, he goes into radiation as a predominance. So we can see that some people really make their mark being so, like, you can receive so powerfully that you're radiant in your receiving. You can radiate so powerfully that you are just like a streaming reception of sun and fire and charisma. So that is the distinction over here, using it as a character. So we want to always be radiating. George Stanoff, one of my teachers, said we are always concentrating, imagining, and radiating. And that's this overall radiation here. So concentration, imagination, radiation, they are the first three letters of circle: concentration, imagination, radiation. And what I say is with centeredness, lightness, and ease, which completes the circle. Concentration, imagination, radiation, with centeredness, lightness, and ease. So I'm going to wrap this up now. And Paul, thank you so much for joining me today on our Radiating and Receiving the NMCA Way.
Take care.
My favorite person is...
One minute on your imaginary bodies.
Ha!